Okay, so as promised, here's a few more examples of, again, just putting our thoughts together for some situations. And so there's 6 more polynomials here. And what you'll do is you'll see me working through our flow chart. I just wrote it real tiny here in the corner. So again, we first ask ourselves, is there a GCF? Then we ask ourselves, how many terms? 2, we use a pattern. 3, we're using AC or GNC. And 4, we're using grouping. All right, and so there's basically our flow chart. We keep cycling through it, and so let's put it to work. So in the first one, right, what I see is a situation where there's no GCF, right? Nothing between this term and this term are common. So GCF is out the door. Second thing is I noticed a binomial with a minus sign and a cube. So that's probably telling me we're looking at the difference of cubes. All right, so we just need to figure out who's A and who's B. Well, clearly, right, on the front end, we know what A is. It's X. And then 216, I think in an earlier video, I shared with you that that's basically 6 to the 3rd power. So there's our A and our B. And so let me go ahead and write the formula again for our difference of cubes. It's A minus B. We square the first. We square the last. We add their product in the middle. Right? And so basically we just plug in what we know. So we have X minus 6, X squared, plus 36, and then their product, well, if we multiply them together, we get 6x. And then a reminder, this trinomial doesn't factor. All right, so don't even try it. It won't. Your AC won't work. Your guessing and checking, we're done. So there you go. So we used our flow chart to break that binomial into a product. The next one we're looking at, again, there's no GCF. Nothing's in common. These is 2s and 4s, and these are 5s. So nothing in common. I see a difference and I see a square. So right away I'm thinking, well, this binomial has to fit that pattern. And so we just need to make it fit. The first term would be a 2x squared, and the next term would be a 5 squared. And so there's our pattern, right? So here's our A and there's our B. And so what's the pattern? We add them and we subtract them. Boom, we're finished. There's our product. So hopefully you're kind of seeing how that's done. In the next one, again, we always look for a GCF. I don't see one, right? But I do see 4 terms. And so this is an automatic grouping technique. And then we are grouping around a minus sign, so be careful. So I'm going to introduce some parentheses. I'm going to group the first 2. We're grouping around a minus. So I accompany that with a sign change, right? So, and again, if you just redistribute to the minus, you can see we get back where we were at. So we're in good balance. GCF question, well, on the front end it's x squared. We're left with x plus 2. On the back end it's 9, and we're left with x plus 2. Again, there's my minus sign, and to its left and its right, I see a common factor of x plus 2. What's left behind? X squared minus 9. Okay, and so good news is we've factored, right? It's broken up into a product. The bad news is that guy looks pretty familiar, right? This one can be factored even more. That basically fits our difference of squares pattern, right? So we're looking at x squared minus 3 squared. So this x plus 2 is going to be carried on down, and that binomial breaks up into x plus 3, x minus 3. And so we are fully factored there. Everything's broken down as far as it possibly can go. Can't break it down further. So there we go. So these 3 factors, when we multiply them together, give me that 4-term polynomial, factoring completely. So hopefully you're getting the hang of it. It just takes a lot of practice, so make sure you're doing your homework. Explain yourself on Canvas, right? Hit me for some office hours if you need it, but it just takes practice. So 3 more. So this next one, I'm looking first for a GCF, and when I look closely, it looks like at least a 3 is common, and everybody has at least an x. So this does have a GCF, so I'm going to factor that out, and what's left behind is x squared minus 2x, and then plus a 1. So we've started our factoring process, but there's one of our trinomials that may or may not factor. All right, and so how do we factor trinomial? Well, you can either use the AC method or guessing and checking. We've already used AC, so I'm actually going to satisfy my guessers and checkers and use that. So this 3x is along for the ride, and then I'm trying to figure out, right, what times what gives me the first. So x times x will do the trick. And then what times what gives me a 1, but I kind of see a negative here. So how about we use -1 and -1. All right, and so there's my F and L, now the O and the I. When I check this, the outer gives us a -x, the inner gives us a -x, for a combined total of -2x. So we did it. There is my final factored form. 3x times x minus 1 times x minus 1. By the way, you could write your answer like that, right? X minus 1 is a repeated multiplication. So 3x times x minus 1 squared is also acceptable. And as a matter of fact, you might have to type that in that way in my math lab, but I would accept that answer as well. You factored it, and that's what I'm after. Okay, so again, the flow chart, notice how I'm constantly walking through it at each step. GCF, how many terms, and we just keep going until I have to stop. Number 5, again, you should always look for a GCF first. So looking at these two terms, I do see a 2 in common, and I see an x. So my GCF is a 2x. When I factor that away, I get an x cubed, and I believe 8. All right, and now what I have, right, if we take a look at this binomial, it looks suspiciously like the sum of cubes. All right, and so we have x cubed plus 2 cubed, and yeah, we're set to go. So this 2x comes along for the ride. The way we factor a sum of cubes is we take these two bases and we add them. We square the first base, we square the second base, and we subtract the product in the middle. So x times 2 would give us 2x. And that's a 4. Sorry about that. All right, and so there would be our full factorization. Remember that the quadratic that we get in a sum or difference of squares, it doesn't factor. Save yourself some time trying to factor, it won't. And so these three things, that monomial times this binomial times this trinomial, that product results in that binomial right there. We broke it up into a product. So hopefully you're getting the hang of it. One last one, and then we'll move forward. So in this one, the challenge I gave you is we have not just one variable, but two. So don't panic, right? Use your flow chart. So my flow chart says GCF. So I'm looking at this GCF-wise, and I don't see anything in common, right? These guys share a 2 in common. These guys share an x in common, but there's nothing common to all three. So we're going to move forward. How many terms? I see 3, and it is of degree 2, right? Everybody's degree 2 there. So if you're a guesser and a checker, here's what you're thinking, right? So my GNC people are probably thinking, okay, my F and my L, what times what gives me a 3x squared? Well, how about we try 3x and x? And then what times what gives us a negative 8y? And so perhaps how about a positive 4y and a minus 2y? So I've guaranteed the first times the first is the first, and the last times the last is the last. Okay, so the check comes with the O and the I. My outer is a negative 6xy, my inner is a positive 4xy, and we get a negative 2xy. And unfortunately we need a positive. So I guessed wrong, but we're close. All I need to do is just flip-flop my signs. And I'm not going to bother to check that because I know it's going to check out. First times first is first, last times last is last. Outer is a positive, inner is a negative, right, giving us a positive 2xy. So that's a GNC person. If you're an AC person, right, your A in this case is 3. Your C in this case is negative 8, giving us negative 24. So what two numbers multiply up to negative 24 but add up to 2? So we'll sit here and we'll think for a moment, right, what two numbers do that, right, add up to 2 and then negative 4, right? And I believe negative 4 and 6 are your two numbers, right? They multiply to negative 24 and they add up to 2. So what do we do with those? Well, we leave the first term alone, we leave the last term alone, and we rewrite the middle term. And we group. You're grouping around a plus sign, so be careful. And then you're back to the GCF. So right here the GCF is x. We have a 3x minus 4y. Back here, I believe it's a 2y, right? And we have a 3x minus 4y. There's the plus sign to its left and its right. I see 3x minus 4y. What's left behind is x plus 2y. And so there's your ACers. So that should wrap up 5.6. Again, we're just putting all the ideas together. Practice, practice, practice. Because this skill we're going to constantly be factoring like crazy almost throughout the whole rest of our semester. So get proficient at it. We're done with Chapter 5, and we're probably going to be moving on to Chapter 6. See you guys in the next set of videos. Again, get help if you need it.